one of the most unpredictable places in all of Central Asia. A country where presidents change so often, it sometimes feels like they don't even have time to unpack their things in office. While its neighbors, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, spent decades under the unshakable rule of so-called fathers of the nation, Kyrgyzstan seems to be running its own experiment. What happens when a nomadic worldview collides with Western-style democracy? The result was complicated. This is the most mountainous country in the region. The Tian Shan ridges, no sea, no ocean, no major trade routes. It would seem like a dead end. And yet, one of the strongest shadow economies in the post-Soviet world took shape here. The country functions as a gray zone between Beijing and the rest of Eurasia. In Kyrgyzstan, people rarely rely on the state. They're used to getting by on their own. Family, close circles, personal ties, that's what actually works. Inside these circles, there are unwritten rules. Often they carry more weight than formal laws. Customs that would be treated as crimes elsewhere are still seen here as normal. A diploma doesn't mean much on its own. Without the right family behind you, it loses value fast. Business and politics rest on personal connections. Who knows whom, who is trusted, and whether you're considered one of us. Imagine living in a place with no real state institutions, just you, your livestock, and endless mountains. In a place like that, surviving alone isn't an option. If someone steals your horse or a neighboring village attacks your settlement, you don't file a report, you call your brothers. As far back as the 15th century, Kyrgyz society was split into two large confederations, on Khanate and Sultanate, the right wing and the left wing. These weren't political movements or ideologies. They were hard alliances of clans, built around the most valuable resource of all, pasture land. For a nomad, the state was distant and mostly unnecessary. It showed up only when a major war arrived. The rest of the time, order was kept through elders, reputation, and informal agreements, what people today would casually describe as living by the rules. When the Russian Empire arrived, and later the Soviet Union, they did what empires always do. They tried to replace clans with bureaucracy. It didn't work. Instead, the Soviet system absorbed the clans into its own structure. A new kind of official emerged. In Moscow, he wore a gray suit, quoted Marx, and followed the party line. Back home, he was still a representative of his clan. Then, in 1991, the Union collapsed, and with it, the state. But the clans didn't go anywhere, trust in institutions disappeared, and people once again gathered around what they knew best: family, clan, and local ties. Politics, customs, and even the security services gradually ended up in clan hands. International monitors love to call Kyrgyzstan the Switzerland of Central Asia, an island of democracy. There's a parliament, a constitution, a relatively free press, but there's a catch. In just 30 years, that constitution has been rewritten 10 times. There are over 250 political parties in the country. For 6 million people, that's not diversity. It's a political flea market. Politics here runs less on ideas and more on cash. During the 2020 elections, investigative journalists reported that a spot on a viable party list could cost between $200,000 and $300,000. You pay for the seat. In return, you get a mandate, immunity, and access to the system itself. After the 2020 uprising, the state went through a massive reboot. Within months, around 80% of government officials were replaced. Key positions didn't go to the best and brightest, but to people who were trusted, relatives, locals, loyal figures. Business works the same way. If one clan gets a license to develop a gold mine, the other doesn't go to court. It gathers a people's protest, blocks the road, and waits. Eventually, all roads lead back to the same place. The big white building the people here have gotten very good at storming. Kyrgyzstan has turned revolutions into something routine. The country has gone through 3 major uprisings, each following the same script. It began with Askar Akayev. He ruled the country for 15 years and, by the end, turned it into a family business. His children sat in parliament, his wife controlled the money, Major businesses belonged either to the president himself or to people close to him. In 2005, public anger turned into street protests. Akayev fled to Moscow. Many believed the family clan was gone. They were wrong. Under Kurmanbek Bakiev, corruption stopped being a problem and became the system itself. His son, Maxim, took control of K financial flows, while the president's brothers ran the security services. In 2010, it ended in blood. During another storming of the White House, snipers opened fire on the crowd. Nearly 90 people were killed. Bakiev fled as well. The third time followed the same pattern in 2020. Disputes over election results, a nighttime storming of parliament, and the release from prison of a man who would become president just days later, Sadir Japarov. By then, it was already a familiar script. Kyrgyzstan doesn't generate much wealth on its own. It depends on gold, migrants, and money earned elsewhere. So where does the money come from in a country that produces almost nothing? A large share of it lives in the shadows. First of all, Kyrgyzstan has turned into a massive transit hub for Chinese goods. Strange things happen at the border. Chinese customs reports shipments worth billions of dollars, while Kyrgyz customs officially sees only millions. The rest simply vanishes, or rather, ends up in the pockets of those who control the border. People like the now notorious Raimbek Matraimov, widely known as Raim the Millionaire. Matraimov's official salary as deputy head of customs was around $1,000 a month, yet while he was supposedly serving the public, his family was buying luxury penthouses in Dubai worth millions, and his wife was posting Instagram photos of a lifestyle he would have needed centuries to afford on his official income. When journalists uncovered the scheme, they estimated that at least $700 million had passed through his hands. When pressure mounted, Matraimov pulled what many called a ninja move. He simply changed his last name to Ismailov to sidestep US sanctions, and when the case finally reached court, he walked away with a symbolic $3,000 fine. Only much later did the state manage to recover assets worth more than $200 million, including an entire 14-story business center in Bishkek. The heart of this system is the Dordoy market. It's a sprawling city made of shipping containers covering about 100 hectares and employing tens of thousands of people. In practice, it functions as Central Asia's main transport hub for gray market goods, and all of this is possible because of a unique legal loophole. Kyrgyzstan is simultaneously a member of the World Trade Organization and the Eurasian Economic Union with Russia. Goods from China enter Kyrgyzstan under extremely low WTO tariffs. From there, thanks to the absence of internal borders with Russia and Kazakhstan, this mass market merchandise spreads across the post-Soviet space as domestic goods. The real golden age for Dordoy began after 2022. When Western brands left the Russian market, Kyrgyzstan became one of the main gateways for parallel imports. Products that could no longer be officially bought in Moscow, from iPhones to BMW spare parts, began moving by truck through Kyrgyz mountain passes. Along with goods, the country also sends out its people. More than 1 million Kyrgyz citizens work abroad, mainly in Russia and Turkey. Every year they send home around $2.5 billion, nearly 30% of the country's total GDP. For the state, this is convenient. Gold is another pillar of the economy. High in the mountains lies the Kumtor mine, a literal gold vein that accounts for roughly 10% of the national economy. Over the past 30 years, more than 400 tons of gold have been extracted there. For decades, Kumtor has been the main prize in political battles. Presidents accused investors of corruption, nationalized the mine, and fought lawsuits in London. But the underlying logic never changed. Whoever controls Kumtor controls real cash. There is something in Kyrgyzstan that can't be explained by economics or politics alone, a place where the modern world collides with something much older. This is alakachu, the traditional practice of bride kidnapping. From the outside, it is often presented as an exotic custom for tourists, but let's be clear, this is the abduction of a human being. The process itself is disturbingly ordinary. A car pulls up, a few men jump out, the woman is forced into the vehicle, sometimes through deception. "Come on, we'll give you a ride." Often as a group, friends, brothers, relatives, she is taken to the groom's house. A white scarf is already waiting there, meant to be placed over her head, a supposed sign of consent. Why does this still exist in 2025? Beyond patriarchy, there's also a cold calculation. Weddings in Kyrgyzstan are expensive, loans, celebrations, and kalim, the bride price, can push families into debt. Kidnapping becomes a way to cut costs, a kind of violent discount for those who don't want to pay. By law, this is a serious crime. The government has officially declared zero tolerance toward abductions. For a long time, however, the criminal code contained a striking absurdity. Kidnapping a woman carried a lighter sentence than stealing livestock.
Давайте статью Уголовного кодекса «Похищение человека двух и более лиц». С 7 до 11 лет карается лишением свободы с конфискацией имущества. Похищение скота в крупном размере карается от 8 до 12 лет. Получается, скот дороже человеческой жизни.
The most tragic symbol of how the system fails is the story of 19-year-old Burulai Turdali killed in 2018. She was abducted, but police managed to stop the car in time. Both she and her kidnapper were taken to the station. It seemed she was safe. Instead, officers left the room, leaving the victim alone with her abductor. Inside the police station, the man pulled out a knife and stabbed Burulai to death. Only after public outrage did the authorities introduce harsher penalties. Prison terms were raised to 5 to 7 years and up to 10 years for kidnapping a minor. Media outlets still often quote decade-old figures claiming up to 12,000 kidnappings per year. Today, official statistics report only a few hundred cases. If you've never heard of Nasvay, congratulations. Either you've never been to Central Asia, or you didn't grow up in Eastern Europe in the 2000s. Nasvay is a small, green, crumbly ball or powder. Its ingredients are simple: tobacco, lime, and ash. Stories about chicken manure in the mix are mostly a myth, but trust me, the taste and smell aren't much better either. In Kyrgyzstan, just like in Uzbekistan or Tajikistan, Nasvay isn't really seen as a drug. It's closer to a cultural habit. At bazaars, it used to be sold right next to chewing gum. In rural schools, kids passed it hand to hand. In minibuses, you could see drivers packing it under their lip without a second thought. In 2021, the government officially banned the sale of Nasvay to minors and prohibited it in schools. In reality, nothing changed. Nasvay is still sold in underpasses and markets, usually labeled as a vitamin herbal mix. It costs almost nothing, cheaper than the worst pack of cigarettes. This is a high for the poor. While well-off youth in Bishkek switch to Ikios and vapes, workers in provincial towns stick with Nasvay. It doesn't produce smoke, doesn't require needles. So many genuinely believe it's harmless. In reality, it slowly destroys gums and cancer becomes a matter of time. But behind this green chewing gum lies serious money. The exact size of the market is unknown since Nasvay isn't included in official tobacco statistics. Still, experts note that small underground workshops in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan produce Nasvay not only for local use but also for export to Russia, Kazakhstan, and even Europe. Who protects this trade? Everyone understands. This kind of trafficking is impossible without windows at customs and loyal security forces, the very people who are supposed to stop it, but no one will confirm anything because, after all, it's just Nasvay. Every neighbor around Kyrgyzstan is stronger, and every one of them wants something. With Russia, the situation is clear. It's that old relative you can't simply cut off. A Russian airbase stands just outside Bishkek. Hundreds of thousands of Kyrgyz citizens work in Russia and send billions of dollars home every year. If that flow were to stop, the country would feel it almost instantly. That's why the authorities are constantly balancing. On one hand, not provoking Moscow. On the other, not getting dragged under sanctions along with it. But while Russia holds Kyrgyzstan through security and migration, China holds it through money. Beijing doesn't demand political loyalty. It offers billions for roads, tunnels, and infrastructure, but it does so on credit. Nearly 40% of Kyrgyzstan's total external debt is owed to a single lender, China's Exim Bank. That's more than $1.7 billion. If the country fails to repay those loans, it risks losing control over its resources. Even now, there is growing talk that gold deposits or strategic facilities could be used as collateral. On Beijing's maps, Kyrgyzstan is a key link in the new Silk Road. Here, China's grand plans meet hard limits. The clearest symbol of that gap is the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Railway. 400 kilometers of track that were supposed to change everything, and so far exist only in reports. The route has been designed and redesigned for over a decade. Not a single spike has been driven into the ground. Bishkek has no money, and China is not a charity. This isn't a story about failure. Central Asia isn't underdeveloped. Geography, history, and stronger neighbors leave little room for something stable to grow. For centuries, this region was little more than a passageway for larger empires. Factories were built here. Nuclear bombs were tested here, but no one ever needed a strong state. Roads led outward toward places where resources could be extracted more easily. That logic is still in place today, only the owners have changed. When the law is little more than an empty sheet of paper, you turn to your own people. In Kyrgyzstan, the clan is the only system that still works. Family offers protection where the state cannot. In a system like this, democracy feels out of place. As long as the country runs on migrant money and clan loyalty, the idea of a Switzerland of Central Asia will stay exactly where it belongs in foreign reports.